This is the grand finale.
We are told together.
Actually, today is it's your anniversary, Patrick. So, it's not his birthday.
No, it's not.
But 10 years ago today, the board of TotalEnergies elected you to be chairman as well as chief executive.
That's true.
So, I guess my first question is, can you tell me what is one strong conviction that you had about the energy system 10 years ago that you no longer believe in?
Hola. A lot of things happened in 10 years. I became CEO in 2014. Everybody was believing the price of oil will never go down lower than $100 per barrel. Then suddenly I see it crashing in 15. I think there is one conviction where I continue to believe has been completely confirmed is the world needs more energy. And the world needs more affordable energy. And the last 10 years have demonstrated to me every day that the affordability of the energy is just fundamental in all what we want to do. Of course, a lot of things happen, in particular 15, it's the Paris Agreement. And suddenly the world has added to more energy, more affordability, less emissions. So the agenda of less emissions has become much more pregnant, I would say, in all our industry, including the oil and gas, to be honest. And it's true for TotalEnergies. And this journey, of course, combining with more energy, because fundamentally population is growing, level of living is growing as well. And people need more energy to be in better conditions. But at the same time, we need to make this transition happening. And I did not realize, to be honest, that the transition roadmap will be so important for the next 10 years as it was. I was not believing that in 2015 I would have transformed the name of Total in TotalEnergies. That since 2020 we have a clear strategy not only to produce oil and gas because this is energy of today and continuing to grow, but also to add electricity. Was not too clear to me. What I was convinced is that we will need to incorporate in our strategy these less emissions, that will be there as something which we'll have to tackle. So I would say I'm reinforced after 10 years, including the last 5 years, where since 2030 I've observed the way this transition is trying to progress, and it has progressed contractually. When you look to the math, when just to the statistics, until 2015 there was a pure correlation because the increase of CO2 emissions and the growth, the worldwide growth, more or less growing together at the same pace. Since 2015 we have managed to decorrelate. Still not enough, but CO2 emissions are growing by 0.8%, while the growth is more around 2.3%. So we have managed to correlate. It's still not enough, but there is a change. So I would say this is a journey. What I'm sure is that more than ever, maybe even more today, energy is at the core of everything in this planet, the economy, but also the geopolitics. So that makes my job even more fun every day, 10 years after.
Okay. So another question looking back, though, because as you say, today's geopolitics, the landscape out there, it's very unpredictable. Is there any period from the past that you would compare today to?
Oh, today is not so complex. Huh? I've been through a crash of the oil price in 16-17. The COVID was much more unpredictable. I will always remember this month of March 2020, where suddenly everything was collapsing around us. We were closed. What do we do? It was much more challenging. And we have to take strong decisions to maintain all the operations around the world, to take care of our people. So that was challenge. When I experienced 2022, the Russian invasion of Ukraine, which has completely changed for ourselves because of involvement in Russia. I took a lot of decisions, complex ones. The price of energy going to the roof with many challenges for all the customers. So I would say 2025 is a new step. That's true, but I remember in 21, I was in beginning of 2020, I was after 5 years being CEO and chairman. I said, okay, no, you manage that. Things are in order. It could be more quiet. I can tell you, it has not been more quiet. That's not true. So what I learned is that it's only in Excel files that things are linear. So the planet is not linear at all. So you can expect something coming. So this year, yeah, there is clearly a big change. I think it's the history will. I think the history books will say that probably in 2025 we have turned the page of the geopolitical order which has exited from the Second World War. I think it's clear. There is a new, and I think for Europeans it's a real challenge because we have a difficulty to accept it, but this is a fact. You have US, China, Global South, Europe, so it's a fact. Having said that, I would say for me that means that for a company like TotalEnergies, where large footprint, global footprint, what is very important is to keep the consistency of our strategy, to go through all this impracticability. And you know, energy requires long-term vision. And you need to keep on that. You need to keep your strategy aligned, to keep the consistency in order to go through this unknown or these unpredictable matters. You have also probably to draw some lessons for the management of your portfolio. But I think so it's not more complex than ever. What is more complex is the competition of US companies today. But we managed to do our own way, you know, our own way.
As you say, you know, you're looking in the long term always, and the projects that you're investing huge amounts of money in can take years or decades to earn that money back. How do you balance that against, you know, the short-term considerations? Just talk us through a little bit about how you make those decisions, especially.
I think it's true that by the way, we find the oil and the gas where it is. You know, I don't decide where I find it. So you know, that's true that we went to Iraq in 2020 when everybody exited. It was a huge opportunity to get some contracts, of course. And the matter is to have the right rewards when you take more risk. You know, it's a question of risk and reward. It's also for us, because TotalEnergies is quite different from the other majors. We never had oil and gas in our home country. We had lack in the past, but it was quite limited. So we have been obliged to deploy and to build this fourth largest international oil and gas company in the world outside of our home country. And in fact, there is one thing which is important, is the diversification of the portfolio. To face this uncertainty, we diversify the portfolio. None of the country represent more than 10% on the portfolio. Russia was just at 10. By the way, it demonstrates that we have been quite agile. In fact, when people remember our engagement in Russia in 22 and the way we have shifted quickly to rebalance the portfolio in the US. Yes, we made events pushed us in the US, but you know, US LNG and even more today is a real traction for us, very attractive. But in fact, so diversification, it's also a matter of the integration along the value chain. What is very important for me in the business model of TotalEnergies is to keep, I'm producing upstream, I'm transforming in refining, I'm distributing, to keep all the elements of the value chain. Because in this type of environment, you will have to capture the value of the different elements. That's the economic part. The last point I draw, and what I said to my teams recently, you need even to be more local than ever. That means that, yes, you have the big geopolitics, but in fact, and I think it's a strength of TotalEnergies, our DNA has always been to implement our people, our families in the countries. And today in this world, we need even more than ever to demonstrate that the local stakeholders, to the states, or all states, that we are there to work for them and to keep this relationship. That's a way, I would say, to manage part of this risk. But, you know, yes, it's true that in my portfolio, you know, Yemen, for example, has been shut down in, I think, almost 2015. 10 years there, we maintain the plant. We don't know when this war will happen, so we have optionalities. And that's the other world. For me, the other important word in the way I led the strategy is to create and to keep optionalities in order to be able to rebound. Again, rebounding from Russia to the US, because we had prepared ourselves to be able to move like that.
Just thinking across all of your projects then, around the world, which are the ones that you worry about? Which are the ones that keep you up at night?
Oh, none of them. I'm very... what keeps me awake in the night, I will tell you, is the safety and the security. Safety of my assets, security of my people. Mm-hmm. That's for me the fundamental.
Of course.
That's fundamental. When I became CEO, I declared safety as a value. in the company, because for me, this is a big risk. I always remember what Macondo has done to one of my peers, the consequence they still suffer from that. And security, because when you expose people in different countries, of course, you don't expose them to insecure situation, but things could happen, like again, the example of Yemen. And so you have to manage that. That keeps me awake. I mean, to be sure that the money does not, and our profitability will not go beyond protecting our people and our assets. That's the thing. Aside that, countries, it changes, from time to time. So it's moving on, Look, and so it depends on the situation. You have but we keep a permanent eye on the different situation. But honestly, yes, we have some challenges in some countries, but we have also plenty of good things which happen to us. So, I mean, recently I spent quite a lot of time on Namibia to better understand Namibia. I visit Namibia with the view that we could expand our position, partnering with Galp. So for me, it's understanding that country better. I mean, to go back, it's part of what I do. It does not borrow me, but it's a bet that we will do together with Galp to become an anchor partner of this country. So that's the type of things which I'm interested to.
Okay, I want to turn back to Europe. Now, you've warned in the past that Europe is at risk of deindustrialization. Do you see a path out of that now? And in the long term, can you just tell us a little bit about how Europe can be competitive if it's going to be dependent on imported LNG?
In fact, it depends to what do we mean by industry in Europe? Because industry covers a lot of segments. It's true that if you speak about energy-intensive industry, it will be more complex to produce chemicals in Europe than in the US, to be clear, or in the Middle East, there is no doubt. Does that mean that we must give up? No, I think there are ways to do it. I'm not a protectionist, to be clear. By the way, Europe is not at all. We are the most open continent. Some people think we are a little naive. It's true that we have been hit by this Russian-Ukrainian war because, in fact, part of the competitiveness of Europe was coming from the Russian gas, which suddenly we discovered that Russia was not in Europe. For those who read the history, that's back. Yes, it's true that LNG is more expensive than gas, than domestic gas. We still have some Norwegian gas. My view on energy is that there is only one way to progress, which is more integration in Europe. I think if we want to maybe have an efficient energy system, we need to think to integrate the system. Because believing that each country will be able to have its own independent energy policy will lead to, obviously, an unoptimized way to invest in the different tools. For example, France is a big nuclear country, good for Europe. By the way, France is benefiting from the unified market of electricity. We export electricity at a marginal cost, which is the gas price. So it's good for France. I don't understand the debate in France. But why not considering that other countries will invest more in renewable or more in gas plants while France has a gas, so as a nuclear. So if you think the integration, then you can expect to have a more, I would say, optimized system. Then, come back to your question about industry, it's a political choice, in fact, fundamentally. Because there is one thing which is a cost of energy, and then you have another thing, which is what is the cost for energy for your industry, which is not exactly the same topic. And that's a political decision. The Germans are just, if I understand correctly, what the German Chancellor Merz has decided, that he will subsidize somewhere the energy or electricity delivered to German companies, maximizing them at, I think, at 50, I don't know what is the price, around 50 euro per megawatt hour, by transferring what is paid by the residential customers to the industry. That's a fundamental political choice. So it's not a matter only of what is the cost of the energy in the continent. Yes, this is the point. It's also a choice between what do we ask energy-intensive industry to pay against what residential customer will pay. And it's a question of, so that's for me fundamentally a choice of policy. Of course, the policy, coming back to when you put about energy-intensive industries, Europe has taken another choice, which is to price the CO2. So it's not only a question of gas price, it's a question of gas price plus CO2, because the electricity price in Europe is a sum of these two elements. So I think it's good to price CO2, but the consequence is that clearly for, again, an energy-intensive industry, a steel manufacturing industry or a chemical industry, clearly you are becoming uncompetitive on this segment compared to a plant in the US or in the Middle East. That's the point. Will the CBAM work or not? I'm not fully sure, we'll see. But it's a choice. So that means that for me, you can develop an industry in Europe, maybe not the heavy industry. The question for us today, for me, is more, is Europe able to really become a player in the digital industry, in the AI industry? That's more a concern for me, because this is the future for our continent. And to observe today, I'm not in that segment, but it's mainly dominated by US and China. This is more a concern when you think to the future competitiveness of Europe. And so that's something on which we can work. But again, that's I would say. And what I think is that that's why I try to intervene in the public debate. I think it's important that European CEOs are not afraid to express themselves and to tell to political leaders, to warn them. It's not a threat, it's just a reality. It's a reality. Today you can observe that the decisions taken in 2025 by many chemical companies has been to shut down some big units everywhere in Europe. So it's a reality. So it's I think our duty is to tell them. Then it's up to political leaders to decide what is the real framework they want to offer us. And then, we'll take decision. If at the end of the day, as I said, we have not an infinite capacity to invest. So it's a matter of where do we allocate our capital, and our duty is to be efficient with it. So, and that's where we need today, I think, some clear answers from the European political leaders, which is, what do you want as industry in Europe? But to believe that you will maintain the same industry by being higher wages, higher cost of energy, and not the lowest cost of capital, there is little chance that the European CEOs will decide to invest more.
Well, I was going to say, when you talk about digital industries, when we speak to companies in the US who are building out the infrastructure for these industries, they say that Europe is uncompetitive because of the energy costs and you supply power to some of these companies. How if Europe is going to be competitive in AI, how is it going to build out that infrastructure in an affordable way?
No, but for example, in France, we have some available nuclear energy, which is quite affordable. So it's a decision, again, to allocate part of this extra power, which is today unused. We don't fully use the nuclear plants in France. They are run at 70%, so we can run in them and deliver that electricity to data center. This is one part of the plan. So I see some place. You can do it in Sweden. We have plenty of hydro. So Europe should not be out of that game. It's possible. Ourselves, we are working today on some projects on which in Spain and others, where we could try to combine some renewables, some gas, delivering some affordable, I would say, energy to data centers. I think themselves, by the way, in this tech company industry, they want to diversify themselves, and they need to locate part of these data centers, including in Europe, which is potentially a big market, because maybe we don't have a lot of European companies, but we have a lot of customers. So I'm sure it's a big market. So from this perspective, I think we can offer to these tech companies a good some capacities, and France is trying to lead that move.
Do you think it could be a big business for Total, data centers?
We just announced a big deal with EPH in terms of big deal, our size, $6 billion, acquiring 50% of a large fleet of gas-fired power plant. And clearly the idea is that we have engaged in electricity and in renewables. We understood that at the end, the customer, they want an affordable, reliable electricity, 24/7, nothing intermittent. They don't like that at all. And they want us, the energy company, to be able to deliver that. And the only way to deliver is to combine renewables, intermittent, and flexible assets like gas plants or batteries. So we made that move with a perspective, yes, to deploy and to make this offer to, in particular, some data centers, etc. So that's part of the plan.
You weren't here earlier, but you were quoted on stage in an earlier session with regards to Brussels. And the quote was that Brussels is the only place that can regulate an industry that doesn't exist yet with regard to hydrogen. Do you see any change in approach in Brussels?
In fact, in all the debate or the criticism from the US companies, I think the regulatory burden is coming on the top. And I think with Roland Busch from Siemens, we executed a letter to the Commission in the name of 40 CEOs, which were together, French and German. So we make a round table. We say, what are your 5 priorities? And clearly, the regulatory burden came on the top. I noticed that the European Commission did not appreciate too much our letter, but we are trying to express what we think is good. And it's true that today, to be honest, and I'm even, look the exercise of the omnibus. I called that one day in Paris a minibus, small minibus. Look the difficulties, political difficulties, that the Commission has to really obtain from the Parliament. It's a complex system. And there is a sort of difficulty to accept, to reform itself, And it's true that, honestly, I can say that on hydrogen. By the way, there is no market, but you can. They are the most complex regulation on hydrogen. But it's true for AI. I'm sorry, today, rather than for the time being enjoying, trying to understand all the benefit we can take of it, we begin to regulate data, everything, to protect. I think there is something in Europe, which for me is, in France, it's even written in the Constitution, the principle of cautiousness, It's terrible. No, the mankind, we need a principle of progress, a principle of innovation. We must believe in it. Otherwise, we lose faith in our future. So this is a way to build the future. So frankly, regulating everything is not the best way to do it. And we should accept to let innovators beginning to shape and then to observe it. And then, once we have better understood, to think regulation. On hydrogen, sorry to tell you that the green hydrogen, as per the definition of the European Commission, is the most expensive one, and it's not pragmatic. We should have been much more pragmatic. And all that is becoming back to a philosophy of the energy transition, of the Green Deal. For me, what is missing today in the debate, the only way to make this transition, if you want to reconcile the security of supply, the affordability, and the sustainability, is to be gradual. For example, of sustainable aviation fuels, to put 1%, then 2%, then 3%, then 4%, 5%. Why should it be gradual? First, because the industry needs to adapt. Second, because the customer, you can include this more expensive energy in the price of a plane ticket. But if you go from 1 to 10, it's very visible. They are all complaining and everything is blocked. So I think there is something missing. And I know the urgency of scientists to the climate, but in fact, in the real life, sorry for that sentence that one day I pronounced, it does not work like that. And so I believe that the transition is possible if we take into account the expectation of the society, which is the affordability of the energy. Otherwise, we just lose it. And the Green Deal try to create the almost perfect landscape. Everything should be perfect because of the urgency. The problem is that the customers do not follow us. And so at the end, if we don't have people ready to pay for this energy, we don't make it. So I'm optimistic we can do it, but we must reconcile. In fact, it's a question of synchronizing the way we can put the regulation and the society. And there is something wrong to believe that you can do some huge change, because again, energy is a fundamental need, just by regulating. The difficulty for Europe, last comment, is that in fact, the European Commission has only one power. This is to regulate. It's not a state. They don't have the fiscal power. The fiscal power is in the hand of the states, and unanimity is almost 27. So in fact, you have a sort of bias, which is today given to the European Commission, which is in fact, their power is to regulate. And there is a strange idea that the norm will lead the demand, the norm will lead the society. I'm afraid, no. The norm must adapt, and go with the society, making progress in the direction. But to think that the norm will dictate everything to the people in this field it's not true.
Okay. Just one, I'm going to change subject. Investors. We had some of them in the panel before. It feels like the energy sector is not as fashionable as tech. Do you think?
No, for sure not.
Do you think that investors are valuing?
But we distribute more dividends. Huh? It depends what you are looking for. Well, you have two types of stocks.
But do you think that investors are valuing energy companies correctly?
No. No.
Okay.
It's much too low, so you must invest. You must all buy TotalEnergies shares. That's true. That's clear. No, in fact, you know, no. In fact, you have two types of stocks. In fact, you have the, I would say, the growth stocks. AI, I mean, tech companies are clearly growth stocks, which nobody cares if they don't distribute any dividend. By the way, they are quite very far from being able to do it. People are betting on the fact that the share will continue to go up. There is a limit to the sky, I think. Maybe we are not far from the limit, but we'll see. That's the game. And then you have the, I would say, more comfortable dividend stock. I would say, yes, profitability stock like TotalEnergies. We distribute quite a good dividend. By the way, that's why many French people are buying our shares, you know. And so I think it's a different game. But clearly today, the energy companies are suffering of the transition. Because somewhere there is an uncertainty in the debate about where the energy will go. And we have, because a lot of things are said which are wrong, you know, peak oil will come tomorrow morning in 2030. I can tell you, peak oil will never be in 2030. Peak oil is continuing to grow to 0.8 to 1% per year for the last 20 years, and we don't see any change of the trends. Yes, I know that EVs will come and you will have an inflection, but it's impossible. But there is also a huge population growing which needs more oil. It's the same for gas. So you have plenty of things which are in the landscape, which are a wrong statement, just looking to the facts. And this unpredictability, to come back to your theme, of what will be the energy landscape in 10 years, as it's quite technical. It's a lot of techniques, and we are not very good probably to advertise for our world. You know, all my speech is quite technical, difficult world. People do not understand oil, gas, renewables. They think all that is different. They don't understand the whole picture. And then investors say, oh, okay, look, there is a transition. We're not sure, so we are shy, in particular in Europe. But to be honest, not in the US. Energy companies in the US have a better multiple. That's why, by the way, since December 8, we are our shares is listed in New York Stock Exchange. Because I think that this market is clearly, first, a more dynamic market. It's true, by its size. And second, because these type of questions that I'm just asking about the transition are not the same on the other side of the Atlantic. That I would say the strong belief in the fact that we need all of the above, oil, gas, even renewables, is clearly a part of the landscape. So we don't have the same type of uncertainty in the US that we can have here in Europe, and which affects our share.
So do you think, therefore, your shares will re-rate because of the...
Oh, I'm not sure. We'll see. You are still in European company. You know, it's a long way. What I've noticed, you know, for us, it was, honestly, it was a very, I mean, I will repeat again, I'm Paris, but a very obvious decision. Because in fact, we were listed through the ADRs. The ADRs first have a cost, which is higher than ordinary shares and second, there were some US funds who do not want to take ADRs. Wealth management funds, for example, do not touch ADRs. So for us, and in fact, and the point is that we are submitted exactly at the same regulations from the SEC, having an ADR on ordinary shares. So why not to giving the ordinary shares, which is more liquid, which does not impact anything from a legal point of view at TotalEnergies. It was just a matter to establish all the, I would say, it was an IT project, in fact, a lot of data crossing the Atlantic. So it's done, not only for us, by the way, it could be done for other companies, in fact. But we'll see. I mean, I don't see, honestly, from the board point of view, there was nothing detrimental to do it, to try. We'll see what will happen.
Okay, we'll see. Thank you very much, Patrick Pouyanné.
Thank you.